All right, this is a Curmudgeons and Dragons RPG horror story episode. Today I'm joined by Josey.
Well, hello there.
I've got Greg here.
Howdy ho.
And Jim's here.
Hello.
Josey, I think you got a story for us today.
I do have a story for us today. I do just want to very quickly address the fact that we, again, killed Jack, and from where we buried him, these two other wonderful lads seem to have sprouted from the ground.
So this is not going to be the first. This is not going to be the first episode of us back. I'm just backing these.
You're no fun. Can you just take that audio and even if I'm not in the episode, put it in there where I just say that?
It's like a sentence. Just say it again.
Fine. Well, you're no fun. Okay.
You do the work, not me.
Yeah, fuck you. Okay, well then, fine then. I have a story for everyone this week, and it's going to be great because the villain of the story's name is Jason.
Yeah, that
no, wait,
checks.
just kidding. That's the wrong one.
Also checks.
Nope. I was right. It is who I will call Jason.
Still checks.
Alrighty. I did it. We're okay. Anyway, this story is
called...
called...
read your fucking story already?
Yes, it is called The Tragedy of Tristian. It was posted by user Norman V. Wagner artist. Okay, I did my best. The game master, who I will call Jason, was new to GMing and wanted to run a low fantasy Pathfinder game featuring moral ambiguity and permadeath. I was on board with the other players and we created characters. I created and played a paladin named Tristian, expecting him to face a rude awakening from this brutal world. What I did not expect was how harrowing the game would be. Thieves managed to steal from our characters every day, all our gold each time. Encounters Jason made explicitly for us to gain rewards were brutally hard, composed of creatures of challenge ratings at least 5 levels above ours. NPC authorities were almost universally obtuse and arbitrarily hostile, leaving us confused about who we could trust and what encounters our DM actually expected us to handle. On the other hand, Jason was phenomenal at building an atmosphere and world, and we were all excellent role players. I, for one, thought that many of these issues stemmed from Jason getting used to running his own game. Deaths happened, and we all saw this as a pretty dramatic and tragic as opposed to unfair or the fault of Jason. If anything, I felt those permanent party deaths were my fault due to playing a headstrong paladin, leading us to take a more cautious approach. However, Jason did tell us that we were missing out potential treasure by avoiding encounters. Meanwhile, we struggled to maneuver through plots of intrigue where we would try multiple ideas, all useless, leaving our dirt-poor level 5 characters sleeping in alleyways at night until an NPC ally would, days later, tell us what we had to do. I constantly felt as though we were groping in the dark, that it was impossible to gain information. I kept pushing the rest of the party to take risks. We were here to play Pathfinder, right? And Jason told us we were missing parts of his game due to hesitation. We just needed to catch a break to recoup our losses. Now, I should explain that out of game, things had not been going well for me. Long story short, I was depressed and not especially confident in my confidence in real life. In-game, my character had become a scapegoat for the party's misfortunes, a fact not helped by the criticism of multiple NPCs. A fact which, in hindsight, led me to doubt my own judgment and made me hesitant to talk openly with my friends for fear of reprisal. I needed an escapist fantasy where I could overcome an unfair world rather than fall victim to it, to get something right. I considered leaving Jason's game on and off for months, staying on in the hopes of seeing things improve. Our party had recently become fugitives after being forced to burn down a plague-ridden city. We fled as wanted men and women to a crusader castle, a fortress of paladins where Tristian had hoped to join their order. The rest of the party were afraid of approaching the authorities for fear of our character's permanent execution. I was loath to tread familiar ground of rushing recklessly into a situation leading to more party death, so I reached out to Jason. If I were to come forward and admit to the Crusaders about our involvement with the port city's burning and explain that we had no other choice in order to prevent it spreading, is it possible that our party would receive asylum, I asked. Jason replied that yes, it was indeed possible to make this confession and secure the safety of the party, at least temporarily. In-game, I proposed this idea to the party, but that none of the other party members had to be within the city when I approached the authorities. The party had mixed reactions, some outright stating how stupid the idea was because it was too risky. We agreed that I would hold off from following through until we had completed a job to recover a lost ore shipment. In need of funds, we set out alongside an NPC companion. After several days' travel and a random encounter and successful battle against a gang of ogres, I was in high spirits. That random encounter was the first time I had fun in months. We found the cart's wreckage and tracks hinting at an attack by insect-like monsters between the size of a wolf and a bear. With a few knowledge checks, we determined these were rust monsters, insect-like predators that fed on ore, but would also hunt live prey for trace metals in their blood. We followed their trail to an abandoned quarry and stood at the lip overlooking the descent. Now I was feeling confident that we could handle 3 or 4 such creatures. We were a party of 5 level 6 adventurers with an NPC aiding us. We would probably lose some of our gear, sure, but we could win, and we'd score a much-needed win. I was tired of agonizing with and against other players over every risk. We were here to play Pathfinder. I tossed a metal shield into the quarry with a clang, expecting the rust eaters to emerge and take the bait. 3 of them scrambled from the dirt, joined by a larger specimen. Jason set up his initiative tracker, labeling this creature as a rust lord. As one mass, they ignored the shield and tunneled into the walls of the quarry, straight for us. Rust monsters typically don't have a burrow speed. Now DMs can and should adjust monsters to fit their needs. I do it all the time. But there had been no sign of this when we investigated the site of the cart attack. We held our own until the Rust Lord arrived. Another character, a fighter, swung at the Rust Lord and hit, before his weapon dissolved. This caught me by surprise. The rust monsters I was familiar with only ate weapons when it attacked and hit, not when an attacker struck it. The rest of the pack were overwhelming our party. We were looking at losing multiple party members in the space of 2 rounds because I had once again rushed in. I was at a loss. Weren't we supposed to fight these things? Wasn't that Jason's intention? Wasn't this an encounter he had planned for us? Wasn't this something we could win? I used a hero point, asking for a direct clue. Is this a fight we can win, I asked? Jason replied, this is not a fight that you can currently win. No. On my next turn, I cut away my hard-earned scale mail to distract the beasts. We've got to run, Tristian shouted. The rest of the party followed suit, losing several pieces of hard-won gear. After getting back to the road, my companions rounded on me, accusing me of recklessness, demanding to know what I was thinking, shouting how stupid I had been to rush into another fight. I quietly answered that I thought it had been the right thing to do, avoiding the eyes of the other players as they continued to demand answers. I felt it was not Tristian facing these accusations, but me. We have to return to the fortress. We can't stay here. We have to regroup, I whispered, trying to curb my rising panic. The remaining 30 minutes of that session was a blur of back and forth between the rest of the party about what to do, with Jason through the NPC challenging us to stay and finish the job, to lay a trap for the rust monsters in the trees where they wouldn't be able to dig through the roots, a suggestion which confused me. How could Jason expect us to stay and fight after that, let alone survive? Were we somehow meant to have figured out that rust monsters couldn't dig through tree roots on our own? I stayed silent for fear that I would either enrage everyone present or burst into tears. The next day, I announced in Messenger that I was leaving the game. Jason later explained to everyone that he had expected us to learn to research the opponents to find indirect solutions to deal with difficult enemies, a la the Witcher series, emphasizing study and research about encounters before forming plans and heading in. This has left me with an anger that I can't shake even to this day. Why couldn't you have told us this at the game's start? The other players continued to keep me abreast of the developments in the game's story, including the success of Tristan's plan to come forward, earning safety for the party within the Crusader Fortress, but also of Tristan's murder at the hands of one of the party members who, to make a long story short, had received orders to kill him as vengeance for attacking her guildmaster's sister.
Come on.
This I heard from the other players. Jason hadn't conferred with me about this at all. He hadn't even told me he had done this. His explanation? I used Tristian as a way that would mean I wouldn't be forced to roleplay your character, and he'd still be relevant to the plot and party going forward. His death has played a really pivotal role in driving the party forward and tied up a loose end that was left from you leaving. I would now never be able to continue Tristan's story after putting so much time, thought, and care into his character, his development, and his survival. It was over, and I wasn't even there to see it. I was invited back, but that's another story. That was just stupid wild.
Get it together, Jason.
Yeah, Jason, what a prick.
That's what I tell myself every morning. Get your shit together, Jason. This is why no one likes you.
Oh man.
It was just wild because, it was very obviously influencing how he was feeling out of the game, and it seemed to me like the other players were just continuing to berate the player and not the character.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
wow,
which is an easy line to cross, but like, because you are making the decision as a person for your character, and if they disagree with the decision, then it's not Tristan being an idiot; it's the player being an idiot dressed as Tristan. But Tristan's clearly not the problem here,
especially because like it seems like Jason, the GM, was using the NPCs to be like, well, it's Tristan's fault. All of your misfortune is Tristan's fault, and you should definitely direct all of your agitation to him and the player.
Yeah, with the rust monsters specifically, it sounds like it was essentially the player was being led into a trap where everything kind of led to, we're going to go find these rust monsters. And then all of a sudden they have new abilities that are not rules as written, which again is fine, like you said in the story, but there was no indication that these were essentially buffed monsters.
When you arrived at that place, like it wasn't honeycombed with little tunnels to tell you that they could burrow.
Exactly.
There weren't, like whatever, like you didn't get a chance to see them being attacked by someone else and saw their swords get rusted when they hit them. None of that, like laying the clues for that were, none of that was there. I don't know. I mean, this may be controversial, but I feel like the horror story there started like right up front when they said, we went to play Pathfinder. So now for me, that is that's where the horror story starts. But maybe
Jim's coming out swinging today. I see what's up.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was just. I would love to hear from those other players and whether they experienced any of that same kind of frustration, or just didn't care that this was it's like one of those things where if this is the only kind of gaming you've ever known, you might think that this is the way that this is supposed to go, and it's so clearly not.
And I mean, this post is only 3 days old, so this is something that just recently happened, and there are a couple comments at the bottom that the OP has responded to.
Don't rejoin the game. Don't go back.
No, please, please don't
rejoin.
Answer,
if the answer to but that's a story for another day is anything other than, and I told him to go fuck himself.
Fuck off, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's the wrong answer.
Someone asked, did you ever voice your frustrations? Not just saying, I don't like this, but having a full conversation with your friend about what you were both looking for and ways to improve. It sounds like you both had different ideas of what a hardcore D&D game is, which this wasn't, it was Pathfinder, but that's fine. And it's within the DM's right to make the game they want. Based on your post, it doesn't feel like you voiced your concerns. Not to say you're in the wrong, but rather that the DM isn't entirely either. After all, you're both new from your own testament, and ruining a good friendship over this, if it was one, feels a little off and something to talk through. To which the OP responded, I did err on the side of not voicing my concerns, especially as I was in a very, very poor headspace at the time. As the experienced GM, I was also convinced that he's new and he's getting used to it. Things will improve, which really was just an excuse for me to avoid potential conflict and anxiety. However, his behavior towards me after the fact and what happened when I gave Jason a second chance suggests to me that this was more than just a communication issue. Attending the new session, I didn't see that he had learned any lessons nor made any meaningful changes to the way he ran based off what I told him after I left. So it sounds like he did go back for another session.
Yeah.
And I hope to God that was the be-all, end-all of it, that he went, nope, nothing that I said got through his skull, so I'm just going to dip out.
Not working, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from, especially Jim and Greg here, as our seated DMs here. There was a bunch of things, I was taking some notes as Josey was going. There's a bunch of things that are like classic problems that are just like individually would stuck, but like all together are just awful. And like, just let me know what you think of the gaming experience that this guy was setting up. So the first thing I heard was that every day they get robbed of all their gold. Is that what you said, Josey?
Yes.
They get robbed daily. Ooh. And they lose everything.
And they took all of their money. They were level 5 and sleeping in alleys until some ally NPC would find them and be like, oh no, this is what you have to go do now. Like, It just sounds like he was not good at setting up a fun gaming experience.
Well, and what I couldn't help but think is that, like, not only was that they get robbed every day, but that the whole thing with the rust monsters was just compounding that, because it was like whatever little they had managed to like accumulate enough gold to hang on to at one time, like the phrase, they're 5th level characters, and this person is using the phrase hard earned splint mail.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's like, so you should have that, I mean, that's something you can, if you're rolling randomly for gold when you create a 1st level character, you can have splint mail if you roll high. That's crazy.
And like, no, the early your early levels, you're usually motivated by gaining gold, so that you can go get some items or really whatever you need. But like, gold is like, that's the easy motivator for a young character. And to be able to be taking that away after every fight, and then they have to fight tooth and claw to get whatever items they can get, just be taken
not
away
just
again.
that. When I went back up to the top of the post, the encounters that the GM made for them to gain rewards were composed of creatures whose challenge ratings were 5 levels above the party's,
5
and were
entire levels.
incredible.
That's a lot. That was my next note.
Like, just say that you want to. Just say that you want to
Bananas.
give your friends a shitty experience and move on.
Yeah, as someone who's been a part of like a rules is written like survival type game, there is a difference between like a hardcore game where like you are sort of expecting your characters to die at some point, and what Jason was doing where it's like, oh no, we're essentially starting equipment wise from session 1 every single time. It doesn't sound like he's giving them a chance to like perceive the theft is either while it's happening or before it's happening, like giving them a chance to react to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's forcing them into a fight that they can't win, and then they lose all their stuff as a
and then he got
punishment for
mad that
losing a
they
fight.
didn't go back and finish that encounter, that
Right.
he had said, no, at this point, you cannot win it.
I have a couple notes here that are just like hilariously contradictory to each other. So, he changes their expectations to ether weapons. And like, if you want to go, small homebrew or go, you want to venture away from the hard written monster stat block, sure, that's fine. If you want to do that to punish people just for taking a swing at a monster, I don't know, maybe you're a dick. But
Yeah,
I mean, there's monsters in the monster manual that lets them do that.
Yeah, but he spends all his time telling you, okay, you're missing out on treasure by not going into combat. And then it's like, why'd you go into that combat? Like in the same day. And then also by pushing them to take a more research approach to these battles instead of just swinging swords all the time. Meanwhile, a couple paragraphs earlier, you were saying that the NPCs were like not giving them any info. So like you're punishing them,
or that they were like unreasonably hostile to them.
Right. So like you're punishing them for not going into battles, and then not giving them the information they need to to take the non-combat approach, and then just killing them. And then when they finally do get stuff, you take it away. And this is why the other note I took was he says something along the lines of, we haven't been having fun for months.
Yeah, the one encounter was he said, or they said that this was the first time in months that they had had any fun.
Yeah, that was it. And this is my surprise Pikachu face. It's like, of course they're not having fun. You're not giving them anything to have fun for.
Well, and it's telling that the one thing they had fun with was unscripted, was something that wasn't in that DM's prep, that was just
that part.
Dropped it in, right? Because it was a random encounter.
Yeah.
So he couldn't set it up to fuck them over in advance. So, that was the one thing that ended up being fun.
And the players accidentally had fun over it.
Yeah.
And then,
whoops.
Just before that encounter.
That's awesome. I imagine that DM like being pissed off after the game. God damn it. How dare they have fun? Oh, I'm going to make sure that never happens again.
But like just before that random encounter, I kind of blame the rest of the party in this situation too, because he straight up asked, if I were to come forward and admit these things to the Crusaders, and is it possible that our party would receive asylum? And that Jason said, yes, it was indeed possible to make this confession and secure the safety of the party, at least temporarily. They all heard that and knew that there was a solution. So then in character, like in game, propose the idea, and then all like the mixed reactions were just how this idea was stupid because it was too risky, even though the poster, the OP said, like, I will go approach them on my own so that you don't have to deal with the repercussions if there are any. So I just feel like they were being unnecessarily nasty to this person. And I understand like having to separate like in-game and out-of-game knowledge, and that they had already established that they were using this person's character as the scapegoat for like, no, that's too risky, whatever.
Part of me thinks though that like that makes a lot of sense, because in kind of like any abusive relationship, which is what this game and this game master is.
Yeah, that's fair.
You don't see him on the good sessions, man.
Asking him if we go there, will we be safe? And he says, and the game master says, well, there is a possibility that you will be safe temporarily. That's then like if I'm playing in that game and I know how this DM works, I'm like, oh, I don't like the sound of possibility and temporarily.
Yeah, that's true.
That's almost certainly, that's, we're going to trust him just long enough that he's going to then really screw us. And, I can't believe you're going to fall for his crap kind of thing like that.
It just sucked that after OP left, they went and used his idea and it did work in their favor.
Well, of course, sure. Because then they're, that person's not around to,
It just really, the whole situation rubbed me the wrong way.
Not around to not get murdered.
Get murdered later on by another character.
So he's a disgrace to Jason's. I do not accept him as one of ours.
Get rid of him.
He probably spells it different. It's like J-A-Y.
Well, it's not his real name.
Like
okay. It was a we'll call him Jason.
Okay, well, we're going to call him a dick. And,
perfect.
Something I get called a lot too, but yeah,
lovingly.
As one of the millions of Jasons born in the 80s, yeah, I do not accept you into our ranks. This council does not recognize your rank of Jason. And that's
all she wrote, baby.
So, yeah. Josey, thanks for bringing the story to the table.
Oh
we're going to do another one of these every week. Parting thoughts or
find a different game. Dude, find a different game. Dude, or like.
Honestly, the moral of this story is if you've got that inkling in your body, like, I think this is a bad situation, get out. Get out.
There's plenty of games out there.
There's other people you can play with.
If you're not having fun for months, I can't think of anything that I've done for months that I wasn't having fun at.
Don't be friends with people like that. Don't be friend dicks.
2 session zeros. When you're doing a hardcore campaign is my recommendation for that.
Yeah. The obligation in like when someone calls it a hardcore campaign, it's on them as the DM to be even more transparent about what you're getting into, than you would in like a standard campaign where there's room for error with stuff like that. You got to play fair with everybody, or you may as well just, rocks fall, everybody dies.
Well, rocks are going to fall in this episode. Guys, we'll see you next time. Jim, thank you. Josey, thank you. Greg, thank you. I'm Jason. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to Curmudgeons and Dragons. Please share this with your favorite adventurers. Leave a review on Apple and follow us on social media. All links can be found at curmudgeonsanddragons.com. Practice safe adventuring, my friends.
This has been a JTP Audio podcast. Thanks for listening.